This morning, on your behalf, who can help you when things go wrong? Should you complain? And if you do, how do you complain effectively? Often it costs nothing, yet a recent Ombudsman report says about 40 million complaints went unheard last year because consumers don't know who can help. Perhaps it's a problem with travel, water, energy provider, health and social care, a government agency or a public body, or TV, radio, phone or post. Who can help you when things go wrong? Well, our phone lines are open, 08459 555 678, and you can email oyb@bbc.co.uk if you'd like our help. In this Easter holiday recorded programme, we brought together the people and the organisations you can turn to. I have two ombudsmen with me. I'm not sure what the collective nine is for more than one ombudsman, but I've got two. The Financial Ombudsman, David Cresswell, and Marie Anderson, Deputy Northern Ireland Ombudsman. Also, Jonathan Rose, Director of Ofcom in Northern Ireland, Aidan O'Donnell, Acting Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Consumer Council, and Jimmy Hughes of Trading Standards. Now, when I say complain, I don't mean moan. We can all do that. Every second, someone complained about goods or services last year, according to a Financial Ombudsman report. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. Many consumers suffer in silence, as I discovered when I walked into Belfast city centre.
I do go back, but I have to be in bad form. It has to really upset me a lot before I would bother, but I do take things back.
Just the nature of people from here, I think. You know, we just sort of accept it. I don't think we're taught how to complain effectively.
Too lazy. We should, really.
What stops you?
I don't know. Just don't.
Never do. Wife does.
Send her.
True enough, yes. She'd be more direct, she gives me a lot of abuse about the fact that I never complain about anything, but it's in her personality and it's not in mine. She'll make her point if she feels aggrieved about something, where I'll just bury my head and think it's not worth the aggravation.
I'd probably just give up. It depends. Like, if it was a high value item or if it was a service that I paid quite a bit of money for, then I would find that I would need the right to redress. But like, generally for smaller items I wouldn't. It's a lot of time and a lot of effort that I just don't have.
Because sometimes it's more hassle than it's worth. I'm getting too old for that now.
You're never too old, are you, David Cresswell, Financial Ombudsman? You're never too old to fight for your rights, are you?
No, absolutely not. And I think, unfortunately, complain can have really negative connotations. It does sound like having a whinge. But we're always telling financial providers like banks and insurance companies that someone complaining about the service is the best bit of customer insight they can have. Often they'll pay millions of pounds to go to focus groups and get fancy research done, where if they just look at what their customers are complaining about, what gets up the nose of their customers, that's where they can put things right for everyone.
I've heard that said, your best customer is your unhappy customer, because then you're hearing what's going wrong rather than ignoring them. And in fact, complaints were lower last year for banking and insurance compared to this year. It was PPI was a big thing, wasn't it?
PPI, payment protection insurance, is huge. Every day we get about 2,000 new PPI complaints. And that's about 2/3 of our workload. But people are complaining about everything else as well to do with money and insurance. I think PPI has kind of overwhelmed the fact that a good many people are unhappy with everything from payday lending and pet insurance through to portfolio management and pensions. You know, money is a fact of life. And when it goes wrong, it can really start affecting lives and livelihoods.
The real aim of this programme is to tell people where to turn to. So the name is on the tin for you, the Financial Ombudsman. You could indeed be called the Money Ombudsman. What do you do and when can people come to you?
Well, it's pretty much if you're not happy with any financial service or insurance, everything from credit through to savings, mortgages. If you can't put it right with the provider, just come and talk to us at the Ombudsman.
But you have to go to the provider first. You have to go through the process.
You do, because that's often the best way of getting things sorted anyway. It's often just common sense. If you're not happy with something, tell them. And in 9 out of 10 cases, that just sorts it. But if you don't know how to do that, and for a lot of people it's quite intimidating, possibly, to begin a complaint against a global bank, if you're worried about that, you can just come to the Ombudsman in any event and we'll work out what you need to do next.
And you just pick up the phone. You don't have to go through lots of paperwork. You are talking to someone, and that's always a very good start. We actually heard from one listener, Hilary Smith. She came on your behalf and her claim for critical illness cover was turned down by the company, not once but twice, and she didn't give up. She took all her paperwork to the Financial Ombudsman and she told us it was easier than you might think.
It was a very simple process. The application that you send was very straightforward. It wasn't a big long form that was difficult to fill in. because of my accounting background, I'm very good at keeping paperwork. And that's one thing that if any of your listeners are listening to me, I would highly recommend that you keep a copy of everything and that you put everything in writing, because if I didn't have that, I just couldn't have taken my case the way I did.
Do you think that the system is manageable? As you said, you're a trained accountant and you have an eye for detail and paperwork. The ordinary person who maybe just gets a letter and puts it in the drawer and maybe makes phone calls rather than writing, is it easy enough?
I think the process with the Ombudsman is made easy enough. I do think once I got to that stage, it's very much a walkthrough and they do support you. I think the difficulty for people would be to get to that stage and not be intimidated by an insurance company and not to talk to them on the phone. At a very early stage, someone in my bank recommended that I don't speak to them on the phone. I'm very glad I didn't, because, you know, when you answer the phone and you say things and you really don't, you know, maybe they're taken out of context and you didn't mean it that way, but you can't retract that. And then they have it recorded and they come back to you. So I would encourage anyone to do it in writing, and that if you feel you have a legitimate claim, to keep going, because I'm proof that you can win, if that's maybe not a right word, but you can get your claim in the end. Just take one day at a time.
Financial Ombudsman David Cresswell, that woman stuck at it. Hillary had the paperwork, she had the attention to detail, and she did win. But she's giving glowing reports of your service. But to be fair, it's not always quick. You've got quite a waiting list, haven't you?
Because of payment protection insurance, in that area, yes, you're going to have to wait, because there are probably 400,000 people ahead of you in the queue, because millions of people are claiming.
Your case is important to us.
And it's a real challenge for us to deal with that. And it's a huge challenge for the banks as well to deal with those numbers. But for everything else, around half of cases will be dealt with in less than 3 months. And for things like payday loans and catalogue credit, where probably the need is now, we're able really to fast track those. So we're increasingly using social media to actually help people just find a very quick solution to that.
So if you're listening to this and you think, I really should have complained, is there a time limit?
There are a number of time limits, but probably you needn't worry too much about them, other than knowing you should do it as soon as possible. And that just makes good sense anyway.
It does make good sense. And the phone number for Financial Ombudsman, and there are many phone numbers I'll be giving out today, but do not worry about them. We've got a fact sheet. You can have a copy if you want to contact the phone-in operator. The phone lines are open, 08459 555 678. They're also on the website, but the Financial Ombudsman, 0300 123 9123, and you will phone people back, which is excellent. As I say, 2 ombudsmen, 1 ombudswoman, Marie Anderson, Deputy Northern Ireland Ombudsman Service. What do you do that this ombudsman doesn't?
Well, I think what we do is that we look at public services. It's not financial services. It's not complaints about money, but it's complaints about the health service, housing, planning, education. Really, the stuff of lives of ordinary people. Everyday service. Everything that he doesn't do, I do. I'll take up that slack from you, David. But nevertheless, I would say that people do increasingly have dissatisfaction with public services. Their expectations are greater than ever. And it's interesting that we've just completed our statistics for last year, and our complaints overall are up by about 30%. But in health, worryingly, because the health of the nation is important, it is something that people worry about, that's up by 50%.
Yes, we did actually hear this month in England that elderly patients are enduring appalling NHS care because they're too frightened or too polite and simply suffer in silence. I think I'm quoting Dame Julie Mellor, the Health Service Ombudsman. She says fear of making a fuss is preventing the health service from learning from its mistakes. It's hard to complain when you're in the middle of a health situation, whether it's a doctor or a hospital. You're at your lowest ebb and you maybe don't feel you want to or maybe make a fuss and cause trouble.
You may not have the energy to complain, and you may also be worried, particularly if you've got an elderly parent in residential care. You may worry that if they complain that in some way there'll be reparation, there'll be some sort of detriment to the member of your family. And therefore people do need a voice, and you do need to try and make it easier for people to complain. Linda, we've actually moved to a new service for the public. It's our front of office team, and it's called Assist, the word being to help you to make that complaint. And in this year, we've noticed that in terms of our overall throughput, most of our cases are actually being dealt with at about 80% or more in the front of the office. That's seeking to get a resolution, redirecting to the right ombudsman, be it the police ombudsman, the financial services ombudsman, or indeed just simply telling people that they should complain to the body. It's interesting, a third of those complaints, people hadn't actually complained to the body concerned. And whether that's ignorance or whether that's fear, I think we need to break through that.
And where is this new front door office? People can walk in your front door. Where
you can walk in our front door at Progressive House in Wellington Place at your friendly building society, but on the 4th and 5th floor you'll find your friendly Northern Ireland Ombudsman. And people do, while we were tweeting today, David, there was someone in with a personal interview. There you can meet experienced investigating officers who'll help you see your way through to making the complaint and getting it to the right place.
So you come in the front door, you can signpost people, and then what do you do with the complaint that people bring to you? The different areas you cover, where do you take them to, and how long does it take to?
Well, if someone has been to a health body like their general practitioner or a health trust and they haven't got a satisfactory response, we will consider whether we will investigate. And if we do decide to investigate, there are 2 experienced investigation teams. I'd say, Linda, it takes about 6 months for an ordinary complaint, a not complex complaint like about housing or planning. I haven't got my roof repaired. The planning authority didn't listen to my objections. But in relation to health, Linda, because we need to get expert advice and because we rely very heavily on our experts telling us whether care and treatment is reasonable, it can take anything up to 12 months or longer, because sometimes we need more than one health expert.
So the Ombudsman Service, the Northern Ireland Ombudsman, is there for a wide range of disputes. For example, what kind of disputes are top of your list? PPI seems to be for the Financial Ombudsman's list. Is health top for you?
I'd say complaints about health trusts, patient care and treatment, planning. Individuals, they don't have a voice as an objector to planning development because there's no right of third-party appeal here, so they come to us and complain about planning. And thirdly, actually, land and property services in relation to rates and in relation to rating bills or perhaps incorrect rating. Now, it's very interesting here, Linda, because I was talking to David earlier. I think land and property services are an example of a body responding positively to complaints. They've set up what's known as a shortfall in service provision, whereby they are taking ownership of the complaints and they will try and resolve in-house first off. In fact, our front of office team work with the shortfall in service to try and resolve complaints. And at the end of the day, that's all people want.
So how often do you rule in the consumer's favour? David, the Financial Ombudsman, what way does the balance fall?
At the moment, because of PPI, it's about 6 out of 10 cases will be in the consumer's favour.
And for the Northern Ireland?
That's interesting. It's about the same.
Oh.
It's about 2/3.
Right.
Which is
in
interesting.
favour, yes.
So the Northern Ireland Ombudsman, you can walk in the front door of a Progressive House in Belfast, or you can free phone 0800 343424. And again, all the links to the websites and all the contacts will be with our phone-in operators 08459 555 678, or indeed you can look on the website, or you can download the fact sheet, or we'll send you out a copy in the post if you'd like a hard copy. Enforcement, sometimes it comes down to that, Jimmy Hughes, and that's where trading standards often comes in. What powers does trading standards have?
Trading standards has a very wide range of powers in relation to different pieces of legislation. But I think perhaps in relation to the essence of a complaint being made, the thing that I'm most concerned about is the role that trading standards provides through its consumer line service. And effectively, if you have bought or sold something and you contact consumer line, probably your first question is where do we go? What are my rights? And that basically is what you'll find. You'll get your initial rights fairly well briskly given to you. You'll be told what remedies are available, and if there is something within your complaint that brings the Trading Standards Service into force on the enforcement side, then that will be referred across and further steps will be taken on it.
And of course you work very closely with Aidan O'Donnell of the Consumer Council with Consumer Line. But you have some powers as well, don't you? You can take people to court.
We most certainly can take people to court for criminal prosecutions. And that's where somebody has, for example, sold a car and for some reason or other the mileage is considerably less than the car has actually travelled. And in relation to that, we will take action. And the courts, I notice, have become quite empathetic now to saying, yes, we'll impose a fine. Certainly, we may well impose a criminal sentence, but we will also be requiring to see proof that the person has made reparation, and they have been very, very strict in that. And it's a new thing. The courts in the past were a bit sticky on it. Now we're talking about the Magistrates' Court, and they were very, very effective, but this is just a complete new development where they've now started to come forward. You give evidence as to the amount of civil loss, and the courts have been very, very sympathetic and actually has made an awful lot of our cases much more consumer friendly.
And that's what we want to be, consumer friendly. In fact, that's the aim of really everybody around this table this morning, that we want to be consumer friendly so consumers know where to go and how to complain. We had a very good example a few weeks ago on your behalf, Jimmy. I'm sure you remember the man with the 4-year-old Mazda that needed a new engine.
I think, if I'm perfectly honest, I think it's the involvement of yourselves and of trading standards, and the fact that I just wasn't going to be fobbed off, and just sort of perseverance. It's still expensive, but much better than the alternative. So,
are you happy with the result?
Absolutely, yeah, I am. Finally.
Finally, it took a while, but it's an example of negotiation and determination.
It's actually probably a better example of negotiation and determination than many other things. And that actually is the important thing. The thing that was making this a very, very good case was that he had bought in a proper place from a proper organisation. And he was involved with companies that were proper, reputable organisations. By contrast, we've had one who contacted us a few days ago who bought a car outside the car park of a well-known fast food outfit.
That's a good place to buy a car.
Well, that's as good that we're able to see it. And they were able to drive it for about 4.5 miles, which was just about far enough to let the guy drive off in the other direction. Now, you see, if somebody makes an absolute disastrous decision like that, not all the ombudsmen between the North and the South Pole and every case going, there's nothing we can do about it. There's a telephone number and it goes back to a mobile phone. Apparently you can buy one of these for about £5 down in the... Oh, you're the expert on that. You can buy one of these for a couple of £2 and dump it. And that's exactly what it was. And the person has lost £8,500 and there's not a court in the world that's going to help them. And that is going to be trading standards. There's nothing to make us get involved in it because, frankly, there is nobody there that's going to be able to ever answer charges. And I think, if I remember rightly, in the case, the person actually waved the man bye-bye onto the ferry to go back to England again. Sometimes you have to say to yourself, if you're going to make that sort of a decision, you're going to have problems. And can I seize this opportunity to go back to my favourite thing? If you're going to buy a substantial item, pay for it on the credit card. It saves you asking who you can sue. Because no matter what you might think about the banks and other people, they've got lots of money.
So at least you've got consumer protection and you've got someone to go back to, someone to ask for help. Sometimes someone to pay, someone with deep pockets. In the case of the Mazda man, he was able to go back. The car needed a new engine and it was really only 4 years old barely. He didn't have to pay for the full amount in the end. They split the bill and that was a success.
It was very much a success and that was very, very good negotiations. He may, after that, if things hadn't worked out, he would have been in the situation, the invidious situation in this country. The amount of the car would have taken him outside the small claims court limit. Our limit here is £3,000. If I remember rightly, it's 15 across the water, which is a considerable difference. And there was an arbitration system, but fortunately we never went down that. And if you recall, we've had success through the year with people who have gone to the motor arbitration people and have managed to do a case through it that had they tried to do a small claims court, one, they would have been outside the small claims limit. And I would be very loath to venture off into the higher courts and paying the bill myself and hoping things work out.
Arbitration can be a good road to go down, can't it? Marie Anderson, Deputy Northland Ombudsman. You've got an excellent booklet here that I have in my hand, Alternatives to Court in Northern Ireland, because the court should be the last resort.
Very much, Linda. The court should be the last resort. They're expensive. They're stressful. And for the ordinary member of the public, it can be quite scary appearing before a judge in a wig with all those lawyers asking you questions and trying to trip you up. So alternatives to the court, such as arbitration, mediation, conciliation, negotiation or the use of an ombudsman service or a regulatory body to resolve your complaint is always a better way to go, I think, for the member of the public, for the consumer.
And this booklet, Alternatives to Court in Northern Ireland, everything you ever might want to know is in this booklet. Where to go, who to go, what they can do, advice. Where do you get a copy of this?
You'll get a copy of that in your local library, or if you are online on NI Direct, also from the Law Centre in Northern Ireland, and also from our office in Wellington Place if you're situated in Belfast.
And the links will be on the website, and indeed if you want any of the phone numbers we're giving out this morning, 08459 555 678, or indeed you can email oyb@bbc.co.uk. Aidan O'Donnell is Acting Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Consumer Council. All the things they can do, you do different things. You can represent consumers on energy, transport, water and sewerage, banking and insurance, and indeed, as of just recently, postage. So the Consumer Council steps in for all the other parts of life.
We do, and we can handle the complaints specifically on certain markets like electricity, gas, water and transport, both in terms of air, sea and road and rail.
So how do you handle them? Because we hear so many complaints about travel, for example. If someone comes to you with a problem, what can you do?
Well, there's a similar. I think there's quite a similar process when you listen to all the organisations around the table today, because you do obviously want the consumer to go to the company first, the organisation first, because the company should be provided with the opportunity to put things right, and often they will put things right. Where the Consumer Council can step in is if a consumer is maybe not confident or unsure about the process, we can take that complaint on initially right away and work on their behalf with the company involved. The other aspect where the Consumer Council would get involved is, say the consumer has went to the company and had a response that they're not happy with, they're dissatisfied with, and they think that more could have been done or more should have been done. We'll then take that complaint and look at it, and if we feel there's more can be done, we'll take that complaint then on the consumer's behalf as well and work directly with the company to try and get a resolution that actually meets what the consumer expects and is actually is entitled to, and actually what works for the company as well.
You had a big success, didn't you, with water this year?
We do, and I think that's the important thing to say as well, that we're not just here for consumers and domestic consumers, especially when it comes to energy. If you look at water, for example, domestic consumers don't pay directly water bills, so a lot of our complaints will come through from businesses and small businesses, and we've had successes through from hundreds of pounds returned on bills and allowances right up to, as you say, the Alton Galvin, which was over the £250,000 mark. But importantly for us, we do obviously track the redress that we get back to consumers, and we have the running total at the end of the year and the number of complaints that we do. But you really want to change the practice of companies. The good thing, we've done some research and we found that around consumers, around 3/4 of consumers didn't really have any reason to complain with the business that they engaged with, which is really good. But it's just making sure for those other 25% of people that the response from the company is what they expect. And really, the best thing is if companies solve the problem at the first step. When they come to us, there's obviously been an issue that hasn't been resolved and we have to step in. But ultimately for the business and in terms of their reputation, they want to get things done right first time and the customer satisfied.
But they should learn from an unhappy consumer.
They should learn, and it's coming back to the point before is, the best form of intelligence and insight into consumers comes from the people that are already using your product or service and how they view that product or service. So using those kind of in a positive way to shape how the business performs in the future, and that's what we use all the complaints trends and data to say. We can spot things happening here. Either, for example, we know in energy and water it's usually billing disputes. Maybe for other areas it's around customer service. So you can start to pinpoint where the trends are for companies and start saying, well, what do we need to do to change these, to stop these coming through the door and stop unhappy, unsatisfied consumers, because that's in nobody's real interest.
So Consumer Line, you're working together with Trading Standards and with the Consumer Council. Yeah, it's there for people to pick up and find out where to go.
It is, and I think it's sometimes there's two aspects to it. There's awareness of where to go, and that's where come to us and we can deal with complaints. We also signpost and guide because there's other organisations that can help. But the other big aspect to this is the confidence to actually follow things through. And sometimes we look at the time it takes to close off a complaint. If it's a simple issue, and a number of days, things like that large water complaint took over a year to get over the line. So you really have to stick with it. We would also encourage people, there's simple things that they can do to make sure that they make the process run easier for them. we've heard before, writing everything down, keeping communication, keeping notes of all the letters. The biggest areas that we have are in billing disputes. So you're looking at meters. You know, lots of us have mobile phones now, so it's just taking a picture of your meter read, so you have that as evidence. You know, on your water meter or on your energy meter. Simple things like that can help swing the argument, you know, onto the consumer's favour, and also help us as an organisation come in and say, we have all this evidence, we need the proper response from the company to take it forward.
We're trying to simplify this for consumers, of course, and I've got an awful lot of phone numbers here. For example, we've got the number for consumer line, which is 0300 123 62 62. But then there's another number for your consumer line for the Consumer Council, yes. 0800 121 6022. What's the difference? Who do you go to first?
Well, I think, I suppose, the channel, if consumers want to come through to us, you know, it's a free phone number there. We have a consumer support team that can really give the advice. We can, if the consumer's not comfortable or confident to take it through themselves, we can look at that and support them through that. If they need signposted and guided, we have lots of information on other organisations. So
yes, I'm always saying that travel one that you have, plain facts.
Yeah.
Everyone should have that in their hand baggage, because then if you've got a delay, you can open it up and see, what I am entitled to. Should I be getting a cup of tea and a bun?
Exactly. But I think the best thing is to try and simplify it for people. And I think if the role that the Consumer Council can do is come to us, and if we can't do it ourselves, we'll put you in the right direction of who can deal with it. And I think that's the simplest way.
Consumer line, Jimmy, then?
Consumer line would be available for anything that is commonly retailed. Any good or service that is retailed would be a very rough rule of thumb what consumer line handles, and that's exactly what we keep getting people to come to us for every day of the week.
A lot of the complaints that we're getting these days, in fact, most of them are technical things, mobile phones and broadband and Wi-Fi services and charges. Jonathan Rose is Director of Ofcom, the UK's communications regulator. You've got a broad brief here: TV, radio, telecoms, post and the airwaves. Are you keeping post when it goes to Consumer Council, or how does that work?
We're still regulating post, and Aidan, the Consumer Council, will be looking after consumer advocacy in terms of post. And they'll be, I'm sure, sticking their finger in our chest quite regularly. So
you're the regulator. So what does that mean you can or can't do? Do consumers pick up the phone if they've got a problem with their bill with the phone? Well, we'd always encourage them, as has been said before, we'd always encourage people in terms of telecoms complaints to speak to their provider in the first instance. But in terms of what Ofcom can do, we can offer people some sensible advice in terms of how to pursue a complaint. We don't have any power to intervene in individual disputes between a consumer and their provider, but we'll give people some sensible advice, and we've got a dedicated team who will offer you consumer advice. Beyond that, if you're still not happy with how your company has dealt with your complaint, then there are 2 arbitration schemes that are available. In telecoms, this is specifically. Every phone company, every broadband company has to be a member of one of these 2 arbitration schemes. All the details are on our website. This is a free service for consumers. These schemes kick in after either 8 weeks have passed from you first registered your complaint, or you've reached a point of deadlock and you've got a letter from the company that says we can do no more for you. At that point, then you're eligible to take up this free service for consumers. From Ofcom's perspective, while we can't intervene in individual disputes, we are very keen to track complaints. So we would always encourage people to contact us, and there's 3 reasons why we do that. The first one is to help our enforcement action. So we have powers to take enforcement action against repeat offenders in silent calls. For example, we've issued fines of in excess of £1.5 million over the last couple of years. So you don't want the individual consumer, you want the big picture. Exactly. So it helps us with our enforcement. Second thing, it helps us to spot patterns of repeat offenders. And I'll give you an example. In Northern Ireland, actually, last year we had an issue with a mobile phone company who we were receiving lots of complaints into our office about coverage problems in South Armagh. We contacted the company and they said, no, it's all fine, network's working perfectly. And we said, well, it really isn't. They went back and they eventually found a fault, but only because we had, really strong anecdotal evidence that consumers were not on an individual basis, but on a collective basis experiencing a problem. And thankfully, the company did take it seriously. They went back again and they fixed the problem. The third reason why we track complaints is because we actually publish quarterly stats of all the complaints that Ofcom receives. Now, that does not include every single complaint that everyone makes about telecoms, for example, but we felt we've got all this information about the different telecoms companies that people are complaining about. We should verify those and we should publish those. And for 2 reasons. Firstly, I think it gives consumers really good advice on how companies are performing and how they're handling complaints.
Secondly, we think it actually improves companies' performance. As we talked about before, there's a real positive impact to be had in seeing what your customers are complaining about. If I was the chief executive of a telecoms company and I was seeing us top of the league table for complaints, I would not be best pleased. And we've seen some real progress in terms of how companies have responded to being top of the list, as it were.
But if you actually need hands-on help, you've got these two services. It was a Tello, I think, before. Now it's the Ombudsman service, another Ombudsman. We've got PhonePay Plus. Can they get involved in your specific problem? How can they help?
Absolutely, and those are both for telecoms complaints. I should stress. But that's exactly what they're there to do. They're there to get into the detail of your complaint, and it's a free service for consumers. And the companies, every phone company has to be a member of one of these two schemes, and they are bound by the decision.